Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us at Day 2 at the World Green Economy Summit. It's lovely to be here again for the second day. Yesterday was really insightful. We had top-tier speakers and experts talking about fighting climate change, innovations, technology. Today, I promise you a different type of session because today we're going to talk to Gen Z. We're going to talk about the youth and how they are redefining fighting climate change, and they're redefining the relationship between society, businesses, social media platforms as well. So we have Beniamin and we have Wahور. Thank you so much for joining us. Let me start with you, Wahور, and I know that you're an activist. I know that you have very interesting ideas about fighting climate change. But before I get into this aspect, I want to hear your opinion about the role of Gen Z in fighting climate change, and to what extent this role has changed over the years, the role of youth in this fight.
Hello, everyone. Salam alaikum and good morning. Thank you, May, for this amazing question, I'd say. And I'd like to start by answering it through speaking about the people that are around me, the people that inspire me. So I'm a student at New York University, Abu Dhabi, and I'm a public policy student. And one thing that I really like about the environment around us in the university is how inspiring the students around us are. Each one has their own, we could say, side quest. Each one is working on their thing. Each one is excelling in their major. I mean, one notable example is Beniamin here right beside us. So this by itself is something that shows how driven youth are. And even when I talk to other people that are studying the same major as me, which is public policy, like we talk about the classes that we're taking, for example, ones like understanding urbanism. In those classes, we don't just talk about like cities and urbanism and those things, but we go beyond that in terms of how decisions are being made. Who has the power, who's included, who's left out, and who has access to those things that are given by the city. So with that, I would say we get to understand how policy making is, and with this knowledge, then we get equipped to go on and like bring in this youth perspective to it, because again, it's this fresh perspective, but then that's also backed by the knowledge behind it. And I would say I really saw that in also the COP28 team, where there were so many negotiators that were Gen Z as well. And they were like full of power, they were full of ideas, they came in with those like really inspiring thoughts and I would say energy
and
as well.
Fresh ideas, I think, as well.
And
fresh.
The energy
we
is
need
very
fresh
contagious.
ideas.
Yeah. So even seeing that shows how much there is. So like there is this potential that could be taken. So I would say it's this mix between the knowledge that is gained by youth and then how it's used in those public spaces and the spaces that are made for youth to speak in. And also there is, for example, the Youth Crime Delegates Program. This was another thing that was also there in order to sort of empower youth. So again, they chose like really bright youth from all around the Emirates, and those youth were given the platform. So I would say as well, there is this thing of like seeking those talents and seeking those people.
A question I was asking my panelists and my speakers across the previous panels is, what kind of change you would like to see at COP30? So I want to ask you this, Beniamin, and I think that your opinion matters the most, considering that you're a Gen Z, you're the youth, you have fresh ideas, you want different kind of strategies and different kind of ambitions when it comes to fighting climate change. So what would you like to see in COP30?
Yeah, thank you so much. And maybe as a brief introduction about myself, I have been working with the UN Secretary General as one of his youth advisors on climate.
So you're the right person to ask this question.
Yes, I really had the opportunity to interact with UN leaders, country officials, and then bring to them the youth voices to deliver what we want to come out of COP. And I've been around for COP28 here in Dubai, last year COP29 in Baku, and now heading into Belém, COP30. And there is definitely a lot of enthusiasm about what can come out of this COP. And I think one of the headline messages is that this is the first time ever that COP is coming to the Amazon, the world's largest rainforest, the lungs of the planet, where so much biodiversity and nature is at stake. This is an opportunity for the whole world to go there and see it from up close. And this is really what President Lula of Brazil has been hoping for, that by putting people, decision makers, in touch with nature, will push them to be more ambitious and do the things we haven't seen in previous COPs. And young people are such an important part of this journey. I'm in contact with many youth groups and indigenous people in Brazil who are pushing continuously for this space to be inclusive and representative. Because as we know, indigenous people, frontline communities, small island states, these are the ones who are paying the highest price from the climate change. So for them to be finally seen and addressed through the COP outcomes is really something exciting.
So when you hear headlines and analysis around COP, it almost comes back to two things. One is the gap between the pledges, the commitments, and what is happening in reality, as in actions and policies that are actually transferring into projects on the land. And the second thing is that it's really a top-down progress, especially when it comes to policy making. So, Wahor, to what extent do you think that this structure needs to change to actually allow the youth to be a part of the policy making?
I think in many ways it has already been changing, which is a really good thing, because one thing that's very notable to me is how youth involvement has changed over various COPs that I got to attend. So the first one that I've attended was COP26, and then it was COP27 in Egypt, and then COP28 in the UAE. So even between just those 2 years, I have seen the change that happened. And then finally in COP28, where the youth climate champion role was institutionalized. So you could see that that basically there is this spotlight in a way that's put on youth, and where they are able again to have their down-top approach, where they come directly to leaders, to decision makers, and be like, we have 1, 2, 3 that we see could be done or could be improved. So this is one thing that I see really notable, and yeah, it has been happening. And then there are many other programs, I would say as well. For example, there's a new one that was launched by the Ministry of Community Empowerment, sorry, and it's about the social welfare program that they're hosting. So I'm working with them now on this, and it's basically on analyzing this program, evaluating it, looking at the gaps that have been there and looking to improve it. And this by itself shows how those things could be done with youth, with their input, and with students that are in this field in the first place. So even with this, like, it showed me how when we talk about the environment, it's about the climate itself and the landscape and all of those changes that are happening, but also by giving people a higher quality of life, a better quality of life, they are able to give more and give back to the community. So you're getting back from your community, hence creating this circle of people giving back and then giving the community, and then the community flourishing and prospering with it. So I think it's about this whole circle that goes on. And circling back to Benji's answer just now when he was talking about indigenous people in the Amazon from all other parts of the world, where they get a stake to be seen by decision makers, and those decision makers are put in places where climate change is happening in real time, where they're seeing the effects of those decisions in real time. So I think it's in a way where both sides are getting from it. Yeah.
So, Beniamin, let me go back to you and go back to COP28 and the years leading to COP28. We have seen the UAE take major changes and major policies when it comes to supporting climate action. What lessons do you think that UAE has provided the world when it comes to climate support leading to COP28?
Yeah, I was here for 4 years. In the run-up to COP28, I was studying at New York University, Abu Dhabi, and so I've really seen over this period the UAE get ready, and so it's been a great privilege to observe this process from up close. And I think some of the key lessons learned from that others could learn from is, one, how do you build a whole government, whole of society momentum towards COP. Anyone who was here in 2023 remembers very well. Just about every government agency, every company, every school, every shop had something related to COP. And everyone was thinking, okay, what we can do, what pledge can we put forward, what investments we can mobilize. And so showing that leadership from the very top through different branches of government, it's something that I don't think we're seeing quite as often among other hosts of major climate conferences. So this is something that can be really replicated. And I think second part is how the work that you do at COP translates into your long-term activities. And currently working in the international renewable energy policy space, we can see that the initiatives that were started at COP28, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Energy and Environment of the UAE, they continue to carry forward this legacy. And too often COPs are about pledges that then the day after everyone forgets. And so continuing to use those projects and encourage international partners to follow up is something that we should give a big credit to the UAE.
I want to ask you the same, Whore. What stands out for you in terms of how the UAE is still progressing with its climate pledges since before COP28 until date?
One thing that's very, very notable to me is the awareness that was created on an individual level. So again, like as you said, Benji, it was about like almost every other organization in the UAE was working on something with COP. But also I saw it in, for example, my family members, where they started to know about COP. They started asking, what is COP? What is it about? Like explain more to us. I saw this curiosity that was created on an individual level. Like every family had an idea of what COP was. And I would say something that the UAE has done an amazing job with was activating the green zone of COP28, which was activating the public space of COP as well. There were so many schools that were able to go. There were so many activations that were done before that to increase awareness about COP in schools, awareness about the environment. And something that's also notable to me is how many times we'd like do those awareness sessions for the kids, and we'd ask them to draw how they imagine the world in the future, like how a sustainable future looks to them. And one thing that I noticed around in almost all of them is that they would draw themselves, they would draw the world around them and draw themselves in that sustainable picture in a way. So it's also seeing themselves in that picture too. So this was something that also made me understand that we need to individualize whatever like pledges are made. We need to make it something that's doable for people to do on a daily basis. So what could they implement in their daily lives? What are the different things? And then also I would say on a policy level as well, we saw how, for example, there were steps that were taken, such as like the plastic bag ban, where like you had to like pay to get them, and that also created incentives for people to get their own bags, for example, to like the supermarket with them. So with those things, it's like those small things that have been changing, and we see them rippling to this day. So I would say it's been like something that has started, and the momentum is still going on with it.
So because we have both of you here, and because I know that you are on the advisory board when it comes to climate change, you have all the data. So please share with us what is happening today. Where are we today when it comes to energy transition? Because I think this is a very hot topic, important pillar when it comes to fighting climate change. So share with us the details that you have, the numbers, the data around where are we today globally when it comes to energy transition.
Yeah, this is a great question. We're just on the heels of the New York Climate Week. Last week, the world leaders and private sector have come together to discuss and see where we are and what else needs to be done. And there's some really positive data coming out of it. I think just to go back to the question that you asked her earlier about COP and what is its current purpose and how it can be inclusive, I think it's important to start by saying that COPs work. Before the Paris Agreement, before 2015, we were on track to over 4 degrees of warming. Now the projections put us somewhere in the range of 2.8, 3.2 degrees. And these expectations keep getting lower and lower in the sense that our ambitions get better and better. And energy transition is a key part of it. 70% of global greenhouse gas emissions come from the energy sector. Our electricity system, our transportation system, industry, and also the way we produce our heavy emitting products. So in the power sector, we are seeing major acceleration. Renewable energy, solar, wind, geothermal, hydro are becoming the default. And UAE is definitely leading away in that. Many of the largest solar energy projects in the world are located here. And Masdar is the national champions that continue to develop projects around the world. Just last week, I heard a very interesting data point from IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency. They are tracking solar capacity additions globally. And according to what they are seeing, up to August this year, if the world keeps the pace for the rest of the year, in 2025, we are going to install 700 gigawatts of renewable energy globally. And that is for the first time as much as we need to bring us to the 1.5 degrees trajectory. And so there's still a way to go, but it's starting to look better and better and better. China has been just an incredible example of how fast things can go. China in 1 year has put more renewable energy than all the rest of the world in all of its history. And we are seeing this accelerate in other places as well. And what is most promising, and I'll end here, is how much progress we are seeing in developing countries. Because those countries in Africa, Southeast Asia, Latin America, they don't have money for subsidies. They go for what is the best bang for buck for them. And a country like Pakistan last year became the 5th largest installer of solar energy in the world. Why? Because of the surplus of cheap solar panels from China. And if we will see this happening in other countries, that instead of locking themselves into fossil fuel infrastructure, they leapfrog towards clean energy, I think it's a really good sign for the future.
I think it's about striking a balance between investing in fossil fuel infrastructure and project, and at the same time investing in renewables, because all data sets and all expectations and projections show that we still need a degree of fossil fuel in our future. But I think it's about striking the balance between the two to invest in the future. But I want to ask you, Whore, when you look at what is now being called the green economy, what role do the youth play, or do you think that youth can play in green economy?
I mean, first of all, I'd say definitely equipping themselves with the skills to be part of that economy. And this is something that I'm really seeing around me, this sort of passion to be part of it. And then also something else I would say is those startups that youth have started and those movements within their communities that the youth have started. So if we talk about ones from like sustainable businesses, or ones that, for example, are like fashion brands, but then they use like materials that are ethically made, ones that are sort of like sustainable, long lasting, because I think something that also we all have to be conscious about when like consuming in general is sort of having like this consciousness with us basically. So like when we're looking at something, are we choosing it because we really want it, or is it that everyone around us is wearing it so we want it to, which is also fine, but then also having that awareness around that. And then also like I'd say like with initiating their own projects again, there are like youth that have started their own like mini farms and projects where they would bring like kids to it and people to it and raise awareness about like how local produce is and what can be done. And then also in terms of designing the future, or like designing that green economy, you can see so much research that's being done by youth as well in terms of that, to look into the sort of the future of like food waste, of food security, water scarcity, and so many youth leaders are in those fields. So I would say we see many of them pioneering, and it's about like pushing them and letting them go into their fields as well.
So let me ask you both a big question that has been raised over and over again, not only during this conference, but at other climate conferences, which comes back to the question about green financing, and especially from big financial institutions and banks who are, at least until now, are kind of reluctant to finance big green economy and renewable projects because of the having to strike a balance between the cost and the profit and loss and the return on investment and so forth. So to what extent do you think, Beniamin, that we need more green financing from financial institutions, not only from governments? We need financial institutions to be on board to actually make more progress when it comes to renewable projects and green projects?
Yeah, no, this is a $1 trillion question. I'm currently based in New York, so that's the world's capital of finance. So definitely it's a big conversation in New York and everywhere, really. Because, as you said, every climate conference that you go to, the #1 topic is how we can scale up financing for clean project, green projects, especially in developing countries. And the total gap, we are seeing the gap most acute in emerging and developing markets. Countries in Africa, Asia, Southeast Asia, South Asia, Latin America. And this is because those countries have suffered from structural obstacles, political instability, lack of domestic capital markets, and also lack of pre-existing projects that can give investors the confidence that their money will provide them good returns. And currently, the gap for those countries is somewhere in the range of $1 trillion a year, covering everything, right? So not only energy, but also nature-based solutions, agriculture, waste management,
the whole ecosystem.
The whole ecosystem. And so what we really need to see more is the risking and policy action from developed governments. I think the breakthrough in Baku to increase what's called, very complicated acronym, new quantified collective goal on finance, raised from $100 billion, which was agreed at the COP in Copenhagen in 2009, now to $300 billion. Good, but not enough. So we need not only the bilateral contributions from donor governments, and I think we are seeing new countries step up to their commitments, UAE, Saudi Arabia, providing a lot of bilateral finance to many emerging economies, but also multilateral development banks. The World Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, Asian Development Bank really play key roles in not only providing the money, but also the technical assistance.
The know-how.
The know-how. Because what is also missing is the technology transfer. You don't want to only have a multinational company come in, put something, and take out all the money with them. You really want this economy to grow locally, and that's why we need to have South-South and North-South collaboration.
Wahor, I'd like to discuss this idea with you that we often talk about a private-public sector collaboration, but we need as well government-to-government collaboration, and especially as Beniamin was saying, that we need actually the transfer of know-how, the transfer of technology, we need financial aids as well from developed countries to developing countries. To what extent are we seeing enough collaboration of this type, in your opinion? What are you watching when it comes to this type of collaboration between different governments?
Mm-hmm. I think for this, definitely, there is also a long way for it to happen, but also a sector that's really rising within that is the third sector. So with that, you could see how community work is being put in the forefront or is being put as a priority. So how much are you giving back to your community in order for them to give back to? So many times, those are things that are backed by governments, but again, there is sort of this increased push that's needed for it as well. So even when we speak about financing and green financing and all of those things, it's clear that it's needed. And everyone knows that the answer that more is needed and all of the information's out there. But then it's about how much, how fast the shift is happening again. So it's I think you mentioned it before, the striking balance. So how do you strike that balance between them? Because demand is there, but then how much is being put in place in action in a way? Because if there is a huge demand worldwide, that means there is more production worldwide. That means the cost of creating those green projects and financing them would decrease with that as well, with increased use of that. So I would say, as you said, it's not just about the bilateral bilateral agreement, but it's more of something that's larger scale. And with this, I'd say like, let's hope for the best out of COP30 and see like how like conversations between various governments go, you know, because it's about like striking agreements between them, but also acknowledging that there are differences, there are different interests for each region, for each country. So how do you make sure that you're catering to everyone, but not losing the main idea or the main goal that you're working towards? So I'd say it's that balance between looking at what you want to achieve, while also making sure that also everyone is sort of like benefiting and gaining from what you come with.
I think the UAE set an fabulous example at COP28 to the world when it comes to policy, to commitment, to pledges, or to the action taken prior or to in the years leading to COP28. To what extent do you think that the regulations, tax incentives are progressing as fast since COP28 until date globally to actually power the fight against climate change?
Yeah, I think last week's climate summit convened by the UN Secretary General in New York was a good example of where it's happening. The summit was opened first by the Chinese President Xi Jinping, who just announced a new exciting target for China to reduce its emission 7 to 10% by 2035. It's the first time that China, the world's largest emitter, is committing to reducing its emission in absolute terms.
Are these targets achievable in your opinion?
I think everyone is expecting China to overachieve, actually. People are thinking that they're lowballing so they can underpromise and overdeliver. His remarks were immediately followed by President Ursula von der Leyen of the European Commission, the world's second largest economy, also well on track to reduce its emission by around 65% by 2035. And that was followed by a range of other countries, various geographies, President of Turkey, Prime Minister of Australia, Prime Minister of Palau. So we're seeing those countries from small island states to big industrialized economies like Turkey, who are not historically associated with climate action, really moving forward. So the momentum is there. I think we are seeing some backtracking in the United States, where I'm currently based. But you know what? If the federal government is not there, states are still in, companies are still in, civil society groups are still in. So we're not yet exactly on track to meet the goals of Paris Agreement, but there's extremely positive momentum. And what is most important, the economics are winning. Economics of clean energy and clean other solutions in agriculture waste are winning. So we don't need politicians for that anymore.
I would like to hear your thoughts, Wahor, about this topic when it comes to regulations, and to what extent are we seeing fast enough progress to actually make even faster progress when it comes to fighting climate change globally? What stands out for you in regulatory
I think what stands out for me is the changes that are happening in the GCC as a region itself. So I see a lot of basically movement towards sort of this more sustainable transport, because like, for example, there is this whole project of Ittihad. It's something that would span between all different countries. So that by itself also, I think, incentivizes people that you don't need to take a plane to get to a country that's very close to you, like Saudi Arabia or Kuwait or Bahrain. So that by itself, I think, also reminds people that there are different ways to do things. It's not just the conventional way that we're used to. And also in terms of travel between Emirates, let's say, between Dubai and between Abu Dhabi, between Abu Dhabi to like the Northern Emirates. So I'd say those small changes are what leads that. So I think that really stands out to me in the GCC region. And for example, like Riyadh, let's say, for example, you see the metro as well that was just launched in there. And you see in both Dubai and Abu Dhabi, the biking lanes that are put almost all around the city, and it's this huge project that would sort of tie all neighborhoods together. So it's those things that remind people that yes, change is happening, and yes, you are part of that change. It's a change that's happening in your community, because at the end of the day, the citizens are what make the country, and sustainability is not just about sustaining the environment, but sustaining people's lives as well. So it's sort of this mix between both. So I'd say this was really notable for me in the GCC region.
Wahor, what message would you send to the UAE government from here today with regards to climate change?
I would say, alhamdulillah, mashallah, you guys are doing a great job, I'd say. And let's move faster, I think. Yeah, because like when we speak about, for example, like coming back to Tahadri, for example, I was thinking as in you'd reach your station and then how do you continue in public transportation to get to your place? So how do you create this cohesive transportation system? How do you create this cohesive, let's say, food management system? How do you create incentives for people to choose their local produce rather than like things that have been exported from all around the world, yeah, which are yummy things and they're really good. But then how do you incentivize people to choose what's better for the environment, what's less impactful for the environment itself? So I'd say those changes are happening, and let's make it faster, inshallah, if possible.
Beniamin, what's your message?
I will bring it to renewable energy because that's where I work on, and I think we're seeing great progress. Not only solar, most recently Mazda started developing the UAE's first wind farm, which is very exciting. Now it's time to bring batteries on board as well, and sky is the limit, you know, in terms of what the UAE can achieve with its natural resources. And it's really I'm really excited to see where the country is going to get in the next few years.
We witnessed years before the US withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement. What message would you say to Mr. President Donald Trump when it comes to their withdrawal, the US withdrawal from Paris Climate Agreement, and to what extent do you think that the world globally, we need US to be on board when it comes to fighting climate change?
Yeah, it's super important that we get the US back on track. After all, the country is responsible for something between 15 and 20% of global greenhouse gas emissions. No doubt we cannot meet the goals of the Paris Agreement if the US does not seriously decarbonize. I think the most important message for President Trump to understand is that if he actively acts against decarbonization, it will make America poorer and less safe. US is an oil and gas exporting country, but they are to earn a lot more from getting free electricity from sun. And if you look at which state has the most solar in the United States, it's Texas. It's the most Republican of Republican states. And this is because they understood the economics of clean energy. And this is not only giving them clean energy at home, it's also making them safer because solar is not dependent on the international markets of commodities, and solar panels don't go out during winter. So yeah, that's
another question I asked many of the speakers across the previous panels is, what topics are, in your opinion, underaddressed when it comes to fighting climate change? So I would love to hear your thoughts. Wahor, please go ahead.
I mean, even with the previous question, one thought that came to me was how technology, or the person that has the technology, is usually the person that wins in the end. Yeah. So I mean, if we're speaking about the US, let's say, where with them not adopting new technologies in a way and not moving forward, other countries will excel ahead of them, basically. And we see, for example, like China doing that. We see many other countries doing that as well. So it's about also not having this rigid mindset, I'd say, this openness to take in more, because at the end of the day, like as Beniamin said, it's those things are what are going to make the country develop and continue. It's this consciousness and understanding with it.
Okay, and when it comes to the underaddressed topic in climate change, what that in your mind?
With underaddressed topics, I would say how much impact our daily decisions could change in terms of the environment itself.
Especially, so, I think, from households, not big corporations.
Exactly, yeah, from households, from what you decide to install in your home in a way, or like the material that are used to build homes in a way. I would say this is something that I became conscious of recently, and it's more of like how the materials impact how much energy you use, for example, in the house itself. How are different ways that you could, for example, use or build your house house where you don't need AC all day around or all year round in a way. So all of those things are things that do make a difference on a household level, on a neighborhood level, and then on a community and a country level. So it's this ripple effect. So I would say definitely that as well. As in, like, how could people implement those things in their daily lives, how their decisions impact the environment, and what they can do, and what are the other options that they can opt for. I'd say this is something that could be highlighted more.
So we cannot today discuss all of this topic and not mention AI data centers, because now they are another worry, I think, when it comes to fighting climate change because of their huge energy consumption. I was on a panel earlier discussing how they need also more water as a cooling mechanism. So it's going to also impact how much water we have. And we have seen big improvements in the region and huge progress when it comes to investing in AI and data centers. So does that worry you, Beniamin?
Yeah, I think it's definitely on everyone's minds in the energy sector, especially in the US right now, because after around 20, 30 years of relatively stable energy demand, for the first time in a generation, we are seeing the electricity demand go up. And everyone is asking themselves, how can we meet that demand? And currently, the provision of new electricity is lagging a little bit behind, to the extent that we are seeing meaningful increase in prices for residential consumers because there's so much new load. And that's definitely not something that we want to see, because AI is there to provide services. It is to transform our society into something better. So if people feel that they have to compete for electricity with those AI, it's going to create some tension. So we really need to think how we can square that circle. I think the short answer, and where we are seeing a lot of companies like Google, Amazon put their money, they're betting big time on power purchasing agreements with clean energy sources, because solar with batteries or wind are really the only projects you can get from idea to operation in less than 2 years.
I heard interesting data mentioning that data centers can consume power and electricity equivalent to what New York State consumed over the peak times in a year. So that is just, this is a big, big number, and I think it's going to cause a lot of conflicts when it comes to energy sourcing.
Yeah, I'm not sure about this exact data point. I think there's definitely huge demand boom. But I think also we need to just wait a little bit and see, because some of us may remember 5 years ago when we were at the peak of Bitcoin high,
yes,
and we were expecting that eventually Bitcoin will consume as much electricity as Australia. That never materialized. There were policies, there were energy efficiency improvements, and I think a lot of people are expecting we can get a lot better with how we use energy for AI before it consumes all of us. So let's not freak out too much.
Thank you so much, Beniamin. Thank you so much. Wahor, one last thing before we end. We have only 1 minute left. So tell me about a topic that you would like WGES 2026 to discuss, World Green Economy Summit next year. What topic would you like to see on the agenda? Wahor and Beniamin.
I would say, for me, something that came to me right away was sustainable urbanism, as in how do you build cities that are sort of part of this green and circular economy that we keep on mentioning and mentioning and mentioning again. So how do you make sure that everyone is included, people have access to it? It's a system where the lives of people are sustainable, so the environment itself would be sustainable with it. So I think that's a topic.
Love the topic. Please.
Yeah, it's privileged to be here, and I hope that the conversation on youth will continue, because young people are more than 50% of the world's population, so let's make them 50% of the agenda of the conference.
I completely agree. Thank you so much for joining us, Wahor and Beniamin, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.